Welcome to another VFX shader tutorial. I seem to make these a lot. So I made this tornado thing using the shader to prove that it that it works. So first I'll go through the features of the shader, then I will work through the nodes of the shader itself, so you can have a good idea of what's going on. And in another video, I'll try to make a breakdown of this tornado effect itself. Okay, so over here I've got a few shapes and such with the material with the shader on it, with just a texture, just whatever I happen to have. Okay, so first off, you'll notice I split this into a few sections. We got main texture stuff, we got alpha stuff, we got color stuff, and distortion stuff. First off, you got your basic tiling offset, nothing too crazy here, just like you'd expect it to work. You've got scroll, simple scrolling textures, nothing too fancy. Rotation, so this is in degrees, so you can rotate it. Obviously the texture is not clamped, so it's going to have a little bit on the edges there, and you can also have it rotate over time, so handy. Okay, so now alpha, you have a lot of options of where you can get your alpha from. Main texture alpha, this texture doesn't have any alpha, so nothing happens. Grayscale comes from the grayscale of the texture, which is very handy since a lot of texture packs or stuff you make will have a black background with the white texture on it like this. Vertex and particle color, so this will respond to vertex colors on a mesh or particle colors on a particle system. So if we change the color over lifetime to fade in and out, you can see it's responding properly. And that will do both at the same time. So for example, on some of these tornado meshes, I have vertex colors at the edges so that they blend nicer. Okay, soft particles. If you don't know what soft particles are, basically when you collide with another surface, it will kind of fade it out nicely. You've got kind of a soft particle power to go with it there. And then Fresnel fading, basically when you've got a mesh like this and you don't want the hard edges, then you turn on Fresnel fading and it kind of softens the edges so you can, it doesn't look as much like a sphere or a capsule. That's what that does. Mask, if you need another layer of transparency on there, you can add a mask. And oh, I should set the default here to 1 and 1. So now you can see the mask is it's also affecting the transparency, and you can make it more intense. This doesn't really do much. Maybe it doesn't do anything. Maybe it's not hooked up. Anyways, mask is there. It's useful. Cutout. So you got two options for cutout, from the main texture or the cutout texture. If you use from the main texture, it'll take the the main texture as the cutout source. So you can use this cutout value, and you can use the smoothness. Basically, just when you cut it out, is it like smooth or is it sharp? You can make it very smooth, but you don't really, I don't know if you ever really want to go that smooth. Anyways, usually low value here works well, so then it's soft, but it's not too crazy. And you can control this using vertex streams. Basically, you come into your particle system, you put custom vertex streams on, and you need both of them. So the first one, when you come up here to vector, this one controls the offset, so you can have a texture scroll over time. This is most useful when you use it with a curve, so you have it go over time like that. And obviously we need to turn off our... Oh, okay, yeah, that's just paused. That's why it started. So yeah, they just scroll a little bit over time when it's got the curve like that. And this one, this will do the distortion. We haven't got to that yet, but the X and Y distortion is the same thing here. And then down here in the vector, I've got cutout value here. So you can make it cutout based on a curve. Basically, you just, you set the curves like whatever, and then it fades out over the course of its lifetime, or dissolves out, which is cool. And you can drop it down just a touch if you don't want the black at the beginning, or you can do that in the this, so it doesn't start off with the black. Yeah. So that's really it's useful stuff as far as cutout goes. Okay, so then we've also got soft particles applying to cutout. So if you have soft particles on and you move like your sphere over here, you can see that it applies kind of that sharper edge like you would want if you don't want it to blend smoothly, you more want it to have kind of that cutout edge. That'll work there. And same thing with the Fresnel colors, Fresnel fade, sorry. So you can see that it kind of has that cutout around it as we pan around the shapes. So I can just make it look a little nicer when you've got a style that needs this kind of cutout going on. Okay. Then we've got our bright cutout edge. This only works well, it kind of works, but it works well if you have it set to smoothness there, and then you set this value to something pretty small, like 0.05. And then you've got your cutout, like your edge here. So then when it's dissolving, my main text is too bright here, so it's kind of hard to see. Basically, you can see you've got kind of that edge along there that makes it go away, painter, a little bit nicer. And you can see here too, like maybe this is a better example, but you can see how it cuts out with the nice little edge there. So cutout texture just is the same thing. It's just got a texture input instead. You can adjust tiling and offset like normal. Vertex colors apply to cutout. So if you want like a trail or something, this will work. Or on like the edge of a mesh, it'll use that to cut out. You can make this scroll, which can give you a cool effect, as you can see. So if you start combining some of these, you can see you start to get something that's kind of fun. This is maybe not the best example, but you can combine a lot of this stuff to make some cool effects. So if we just disable that again, we'll continue onwards. Turn off some of these so we have better opacity. Okay, we've got our main texture color here, obviously with HDR, so you can make it as bloomy as you want. And then you got a saturation slider if you have a texture with color in it. So you can, let me just pull one in. So you can just desaturate it. Oh, I have a negative saturation. If you want to invert your colors, you can have that possibility too. This still looks a little colored because we need to, there we go. Now you can see. So if you want to invert your colors, you've got a -1. If you want normal saturation, you got a normal one. Okay, let me pull in, just pull back a noise texture of some sort or something. So gradient map, if you don't know what a gradient map is, why is it not working? Oh, because we don't have saturation, obviously. So gradient map basically just takes your dark colors and your light colors and maps them to a gradient, which is very handy for coloring textures like this. And you can kind of adjust this little values here. It's a little finicky to get to know exactly what they do, but you can tweak them a bit to get a little different colors there. I wouldn't rely on that too much, but if it's close to what you want, you can tweak them a little bit. Okay, vertex color. It does just like you say. You'll want this if you want particle color to affect your materials. That maybe arguably should be on by default. For now, if you like edge glow stuff, you can see that there, fancy, and you can make it additive or multiplicative. There we go. So that's fancy, and you can see I do that on parts of the tornado here. The edges are brighter or different colored. Okay, well we'll not do distortion yet. We'll do the culling mode first. So you see these objects have kind of z-fighting. It's got some weird, maybe z-fighting is not the right term probably, but it's got some funky shapes going on here. Basically, we don't have z-right in the shaders here with shader graph yet, so, or I don't understand when I was researching. So basically your best solution right now is just to have some front or back face culling here. So if you back face cull, then obviously it doesn't render the back faces, so it can't interrupt anything. So we'll just have to determine on a material basis which one you want there. And a little note, this is not a true culling mode. It just makes them transparent. So you still are paying the cost of rendering the back faces, but they just don't show up. It's not that big of a cost, but it can add up. Okay, let's look at distortion here. So distortion, simple, it just distorts your texture. I have a little bit of speed going here already, but you can, crank it up. You can see that the texture here affects it a bit. Tiling and offset expected. And this is controlled in the particle system via the second one here. So you can see the power is. So you can see that you can adjust the power. So that can work really well if you want like some smoke to dissipate. You either increase or decrease it over time. And then this one, these two here just control the up and down movement, which is pretty useful, especially when you're not doing it on like squares, when you're doing it on like a donut mesh and having the texture radiate outwards. That works really well. Okay, whoops, didn't mean to go look at that. Okay, and then I think that's it as far as distortion goes. So, all right, so let's look through how I put this shader together. I know this looks really complicated, and it is a little bit complicated, but hopefully I can break it down into manageable chunks so you can kind of understand what is going on here to make all of this work well. Let's start right here with our main texture. Well, let's not start there. We'll start here with our main node. I guess you don't actually have to have them selected, but your graph settings over here. You'll need an active target, obviously, and then you'll need you'll want unlit, transparent, blended, alpha. So you could make a separate one with additive or multiply, but I think from my experience, you can get most of what you need done with alpha, and then you don't have to worry about having two shaders. You want it two-sided. And then I used this Needle Markdown shader graphic user interface, which is really handy and gives you the fancy kind of drop downs like we saw earlier. And that's fairly straightforward to set up and import in your project. It's got a great GitHub for it. Okay, now we will start over here. So we got our main texture, right? That's what all this is basically running out of. You slap your main texture in, easy peasy. Okay, so we've got this little bit here adds distortion or not. This is really simple. We're going to do this about a bazillion times in this shader. You got a branch node and you got a distortion toggle, which is just a bool, just a yes or no. And if it is using distortion, then you use this one. If it is not, then you use this one. This makes it more performant and it just works. Okay, so we got tiling and offset we need to adjust. So this stuff, basically what we're doing here is we're taking the tiling and offset value. It's a 4, like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So the first two are the tiling, the second two are the offset. You split it, you combine them. Then the tiling just goes straight into the tiling on the tiling and offset node. The offset needs to add a few things to it, which we take from the scroll speed, and this is just the bool, if we are using scroll speed or not. If we are, then take this stuff. If we aren't, then take 0, 0. And then down here, we take the custom vertex streams. Vertex streams are nice and confusing. Basically, what you've got here, this is your UV 0. So when you go in your particle system, let me pull it up over here, you'll see that on here, you've got ZW and then XY. Why it is that way, I couldn't tell you. Basically, this one uses XY, and then we have access to ZW and then XY of 0, right? 0, UV 0. And then we also have access to UV1, XY, ZW. And then we've got access to UV2, XY. Why it's that way, they just try to make it as confusing as possible. So what that means is we're taking our UV 0, and then we need, X, Y, Z, W. We need the ZW to make that apply to the first values here. So if that doesn't make sense, I'm sure there's plenty of other videos out there that can help explain this vertex stream stuff. But hopefully that made some sense. If not, you can copy the shader or look at one I post. Okay, so then we're just combining all of those offsets together into an add node, putting that in the UV here. Sorry, putting that in the offset here. Rotation. This is not an essential part of the shader, but can be handy from time to time. Basically, we're looking for rotation speed, multiply by time, add it to the flat rotation value that we've got, and then there's rotate node. Set it to degrees, because radians, I don't even know what radians mean, because I don't remember math from high school anymore. Leave the center at 0, 5, 0, 5, and yeah. If a rotation is true, set it to true. If it's false, just put a blank UV node in, and then put it up to tiling and offset UV. So that should get you to at least simple scrolling and rotation. So there's simple scrolling. You don't have distortion yet. And you will have rotation as well. Yeah, rotation and scrolling don't always play nice together. I don't know if you're ever really going to want more than one of these at a time, but you can probably tweak some values until it starts to rotate from the center somehow. Okay, let's see. We'll go to distortion now. Basically, this is extremely similar to what we did before. We've got X, Y, Z, W. We got some scroll speeds. We got some vertex streams, same deal. See, we're using UV1, and we want it to come out of the, the X, Y of UV1. So that's the second two values on your vertex streams custom data. You add that together. You just plug these into a tiling and offset. You've got a texture for your distortion. You multiply that by a value, which is controlled by yet another vertex stream and a distortion value, distortion power value on the shader. And then you just slap that into an add node out of this tiling and offset and put it into the UV of the sample texture. Yeah, fairly straightforward. Okay, so this stuff is where it gets a little bit more complicated. That's where all the cutout logic is handled. So we'll do some of the other stuff first, and then we'll do, I think, the cutout logic last. So here, this big one, basically what we're doing here is we got all those alpha tick boxes, right? All these tick boxes for controlling the alpha. I want all of them here, and then we just combine them all in this big square. So then you can slap it into the alpha on your fragment. Okay, last thing you want to run through is a saturate, so you can make sure that everything's between 0 and 1. Culling, like I mentioned in my little sticky here, this isn't technically culling, it's just making them transparent, which is not the same thing, and you still pay the render cost. But basically, you've got a nice handy is front face value, so then you just slap it in, and you've got a culling mode enum that you set up as a keyword. Basically, just add a keyword enum. Don't ask me what keywords are. I don't exactly know how they're different. But I know that they let you do an enum, which is exactly why I use them here for cutout and culling mode. Anyways, so if you don't have any culling mode, you just do it as 1. You multiply this by 1, nothing happens. But if you do have culling mode, then you got back and front, you put it into the multiply. So this is literally just a bunch of multiply nodes combining all our alphas. We'll start at the top here. Grayscale alpha. This is taking just a grayscale, just take the grayscale values of the main texture. So you run it through a saturation node first, and then you just, this probably doesn't have any effect, honestly, but it makes it black and white, and then you run it into true, and then easy. That's super simple. This one's like even more simple. This just takes, so the first one there took the whole texture. This one just takes the alpha of the main texture. Easy. Okay, we'll skip that one for now. We'll come back. Vertex colors. There's a node for vertex color. So just pull it into a split node, take the alpha, bool, easy. Mask texture, just like you've done before, tiling and offset. Mask texture, bool, nothing crazy here. Okay, over here, we've got Fresnel fade and soft particles. So soft particles, I have a little subgraph here. Essentially what we're doing is we're taking the scene depth with the far plane of the camera, multiplying them together. We got raw screen position split. I don't I'll be honest, I don't fully understand what all this stuff does, but I know it works. Then you just take the alpha of the screen positions, subtract them, multiply them by soft particles power, saturate, so we'd have between 0 and 1, and then send it out. You don't have to have this in a subgraph. I just did because I tend to use this in multiple shaders. This basically, if we want soft particles to apply to cutout, then we don't want that to apply to just normal alpha. So we want the cutout to control the alpha. So we just send back true. All right, we send back a 1 if that's true, just because you're multiplying by 1. Doesn't do anything. Fresnel fade, do the same thing. I've got a subgraph here. Basically, you've got a Fresnel. That's just a node Fresnel effect. You got your power. You got your 1 minus. You're inverting it. Your power, and then easy. You just so if you set this power to 5, that seems to work fairly well for me. You're basically just multiplying it by itself 5 times, right? That's power, and that makes it have a nice edge. You can tweak this value if you don't like that. You can even make this its own parameter if you want. Then this one, same deal. If we are applying Fresnel fade to cutout, we don't want that to be applying to normal alpha. So just send back a 1 if true. Okay, so we got a whole bunch of cutout stuff here. I'll walk you through that after I do color real quick. So we got color. So gradient map right here, tiling and offset. That gives you a little bit of control. Combine into a tiling and offset node. This is, I don't like this one going through everything. Come here. I don't like my lines intersecting. Okay. So that's, oh no, there's another one here. Oh well. So we got a gradient map going into texture. We feed our tiling and offset into the UV. So this is taking the main texture is coming out of, is this line here, going into the tiling and offset of the gradient map, and then it samples the color on top of it, basically. It works. I don't fully understand how this stuff works sometimes, but I know that it gets the effect that I want. So basically, if you have gradient map, take this. If you don't, take just the default. Run it through a saturation for the main text saturation node if you want to lower the saturation value, and then multiply it by the main color. You want multiply here, not additive. Almost always. You could arguably have an additive, have just an add here and have it swap between them, but I think generally you're not really going to need add, you just need multiply. And then let's see, multiply that by vertex color, nice and easy. If we're using vertex color, little bool with a branch. What are we adding here? Okay, another cutout edge thing. I'll explain that a little bit. Up here, we got a Fresnel effect. So basically get your Fresnel. And then if it's additive, you want, you want this. If you want it multiplicative, then you'll want an inverted version. And then you multiply it by the color, or add it by the color. You multiply it by the color, yeah, and then you add or multiply it based on whether you want Fresnel additive or multiply. This might be a little confusing. You don't actually need both of them. I just like the handy. I think additive is more useful than multiply, but this gives you an option for both if you want it. And then here we just got a true or false if you even want Fresnel. And if false, then just don't even run that whole mess. Okay, and then that sends us into our base color. Okay, now we just got a big chunk in the middle with cutout stuff. So we'll start here. Basically, this is our keyword here that determines what we want, this one, the cutout to be. So we have disabled, we want from main text or from cutout texture. So the cutout texture here is straightforward. We've got a cutout texture with some tiling and offset, some scroll speeds, etc. You can basically just copy and paste this from some of the other places we've done it here. This determines if distortion affects the cutout. If it does, just add it here. If it doesn't, don't add anything. Simple. And then you feed that into the from cutout. If it's from main text, you literally just pull the main text into this. Okay. So we're combining all sources of cutout together right here. this is taking our soft particles to cutout and Fresnel fade from cutout and vertex colors from cutout. None of this is very complicated. It's just vertex color taking our alpha. And yeah, we already went through the Fresnel fade. If you want this to affect your cutout, then you pull it up here and multiply all those together. And now we'll actually do some cutout here. This, I don't know why you need to invert it, but you do. And then we got two options here. We got smooth step and step. Basically, smooth step takes a value that takes two values. One is the maximum upper bounds. One is the minimum lower bounds. I think I did that backwards. But then this is your source texture, right? So if you have, so basically it takes two values, one that's high and one that's low, and then it blends between those two values. So basically what you need to do, like I did here, is we've got our cutout value, right? That, our slider that gives us a 1 to 2, or a 0 to 1 for how much cutout we're using. And then we're just we've got our smoothness here too. So what we're doing is just multiplying it and adding it to our cutout here, so that we've got one that's above our cutout value and one that is below our cutout value. So basically the cutout value is sandwiched in the middle, and the smoothness gives us one value that's basically cutout value plus smoothness, and one value that's cutout value minus smoothness. And then we feed those two values into our edge here, and it blends between them. Nice and easy. Problem is, if you have 0 as that, it doesn't look great. It doesn't look as good. So then we feed the 0 into the step node. So that's what this kind of mess of logic is doing. If the value is 0, then just use step. If it is not, then use smooth step. Above here, we've just got our vertex streams. So you can see this one takes vertex 3 of UV1, which puts us at the first one on our second vertex cutout custom data. Okay, so then in here, we've got our cutout. We have another one of our keywords. I don't actually know if it's bad practice to have more than one of these in a shader, but this gives us the effect we want and is the easiest, seems to be the easiest way to do it. So if it's disabled, then we just don't take anything. If it's, and we already determined our main text and cutout text earlier, so just pull it in there. Okay, so we went through most of that. Up here, okay, yeah, so the cutout edge, we did okay, yeah, so we've just got this edge glow here to look at now. So we've got bright edge thickness. So what we're gonna do, this doesn't need anything because it's just a float. We're taking our smoothness here and adding just a tiny bit to our edge thickness so that it can have that, that thin edge around it. Then we're doing just the same old step, and that gives us something very similar to what we've got up here. It's just a little different. You can see that it's a little thicker because we added a little bit to it. So then we're multiplying it by our color, and then we will invert this one, invert this color so that it's, the opposite, and then multiply it. So in this node, we now just have the extra little bright edge. And that we do add here to this, which is, this should be equal to this one. They should be the same. So maybe we didn't even need this add, you just use this one. That's fine. And then you pull it in, and that's what that cutout is based off. This flies all the way up here. A little node here we take from both. Or if it's disabled, we just use 0. And this is using, if we want the bright cutout edge, then we just add it to our color like we did before. And this color value down here just controls that. Nice and easy. So then that is combined with our branch here based off of our 0 to, basically we only do the hard edge if we have a hard edge and it's 0 for our smoothness value. Okay, I think that's everything. That was a whirlwind. Hopefully it made some sense. I am planning to add this shader to be publicly downloadable as well, so you can use it. One more thing that I realized I did not go over is how to set up your kind of inspector thing here. So you want your fancy little drop downs and stuff that appears when you click on tick boxes, because it makes this material look so much cleaner, and you don't have a ton of extra stuff that you don't need around all the time. That's what a lot of our ifs with bools are trying to help with too, making your inspector cleaner and your shader more optimized. Okay, anyways, it's not too complicated. Basically what you do is you got here and you go here to a property, whatever you want to name it. It comes with a reference, like an ID. I just renamed them. I don't know why, but it seems standard to put uppercase and shader stuff like this. So I'll just rename it like the same thing, and then you just slap a brackets referencing that, just brackets with the name of the reference in there, and then it will make it only appear if you've got scroll, right? So you can do that with like ors as well, the double pipes there for or. You can do ands as well, like you can do any sort of logic that you need. But that's pretty straightforward and very, very handy. You can do 2 hashtags to get kind of little subheadings here, like this one. You can do 1 to have the kind of collapsible drop downs. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Like I said, I'm planning to put this shader out. I have only made this one thing with it, so it may have some bugs still, but it's working very well so far. I'm pretty dang pleased with the results I was able to get. And the shader was very easy to work with, which was very nice, because not all shaders I've worked with are super easy to work with. So I think that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments, but I'm not historically great at responding to comments, so I'm not making any promises, but I will try. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.